The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para-X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Merry meet and merry part, bright the cheeks and warm the heart. For tread the circle thrice about, to keep unwelcome spirits out. Abide within the law you must, in perfect love and perfect trust. Mind the threefold laws you should, 3 times bad and 3 times good. These 8 words the read fulfill, and ye harm none, do what ye will.
Welcome to Stirring the Cauldron on the Para-X Radio Network. And now, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
Merry meet everybody and welcome. My guest tonight is Davezilla, and he's created the Tarot of the Unexplained deck, which is unlike any other. Dave's been reading tarot for about 40 years and is a Gardnerian witch. And he also has 30 years of illustration experience as well. We've got a lot to cover in little time to do so, we're going to get going. And Dave, hi and welcome.
Thank you.
I usually fly solo every week, but once in a blue moon I share the mic with somebody for different reasons. And tonight I've called upon Barbara Duncan to join us. She's the host, or the co-host, Through Blue Topaz with Eric B. on Monday nights here on Para-X. And when I got your new deck, I knew that she would like it. So I gave her a heads up, and in the blink of an eye, she went over to Amazon.com and bought one. She loved the deck and said it made sense to her, and she gets it. So she's going to be a great asset tonight. So let's get down to basics. As you said in the introduction of the deck, it's a deck for when your life is getting weird. And since we're living in weird times call for weird tools, and this wonderfully weird deck fits the bill. So would you like to explain the unexplained about the title of the deck?
Yeah, I was noticing that there weren't any decks that had like cryptids or like Fortean phenomena or dimensional portals or things like that. There's a couple about spirits, and not really what I was looking for, though. They were more like ancestor kind of oracle decks. And I'm like, I personally am of the belief that all of these things are interconnected. And so I thought, and UFOs too, because I've seen these reports where someone will see a UFO in one part of a town, and the same day in another part of the city, someone saw a cryptid, and psychics everywhere start having strange occurrences, and haunting sightings go up, and they all seem to happen at the same time. So I thought, well, if these things are so weird and they seem to happen in these weird clusters, like, why isn't there a deck for that? And my wife goes, well, why don't you just make one? You're certainly capable of it. And it was COVID year, so I thought, yeah, I'm home. I might as well. Mm-hmm. So 900 hours of painting later, and I had a deck.
You did a good deck for that. And it's an unusual, it is the usual number of cards of a traditional deck. Yeah. And you have the major and minor arcanas and the suites, but named each card as a weird counterpart of the traditional cards. So, like, for example, for the remote viewer replaces the magician,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. The Yeti, the Hierophant, Whoop Snake, I like that one, for the Wheel of Fortune. And, when Barbara got the deck, she said a lot of good things right off the bat. And one of the things was that she said you did great reinterpretations of the cards.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, what struck me was, especially with the court cards. Mm-hmm. And, I was thinking to myself when Marla explained this, is that it's hard for people who aren't versed in tarot to think of what a page of wands might be.
Mm-hmm.
But a fanboy of knockers, I started laughing and thought he nailed it, of what a page card is.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of are like excitable youth, that are really into something. And I thought I could modernize these a little bit. I own I think I have about close to 30 decks now, which I know is not a lot by some people's standards, but I've never owned the rider weight. I just don't, it doesn't speak to me. And I have nothing against it. I know it's the most important deck ever made, but I look at those kind of medieval images and I'm just like, I need something more that's today. And so that's why I kind of was like, and also just because of the nature of this, it's like there are people who actively look these things up. And there are skeptics. And I think kings, I've always thought of kings as being kind of the counterfoil to the queen. So in some ways, and I thought, well, if the queen's the advocate and she's the ultimate authority on this, then the king has to be the grumpy old white dude who's going to say, no, I don't believe in that, So that's kind of how I arrived at that idea of like, you're moving up a ladder of intensity in the subject until you get to the foil of the person who's like, nope, not buying it.
And, the suits are interesting, too. I mean, the wands, the swords, the cups, and the pentacles become Sasquatch, knocking stick, ghosts, portals, and flying saucers. And, and as you said, in the minor arcana, the court cards, pages become fans and knights become hunters. And, I mean, it's so much to take in at first, but it really blends in and really nicely.
Thank you. It was a lot of research.
Well, yeah. And the illustrations, I think, Barbara, you said something about the illustrations. You liked them so well.
Yeah, they have a lot of depth to them. And, at first I thought, okay, this is going to be a very nice novelty deck. But there's a lot of depth in that. And I read the Thoth deck, too. And what I like about it is its complexity. And one of the first things I noticed when I start thumbing through the cards is you got to explain the constellations.
Yes.
Because I looked at that and, sometimes my eye gets drawn right to one constellation. Now I have to look them all up again, but thank you. But do they have specific meanings that you put them in the cards to?
So I tried to stick with which ones were actually assigned to each card, but I noticed really quickly in my research that there's not a lot of agreement among tarot readers of which ones go with which cards. So a lot of them I stuck with the Golden Dawn seemed to have the most consistent approach to how to apply them. So in most cases I used theirs. There was a few that I cheated on for specific reasons, like the Star card in particular. I wanted to include the legend from the Dogon tribe of Africa about their connection to the star Sirius. So even though the Star card would normally be Aquarius, and I think I did put Aquarius in there, there's also the Sirius is in there as well, which wouldn't show at the same time as Aquarius, but for the purpose of the card, it makes sense.
When you were growing up, oh, sorry, go ahead.
And also, I noticed in some of the ones, like I was looking at the Silver Bridge, which I believe is the tower.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah, I used that. Yeah, the Mothman legend I thought would be a good one for the tower.
There is so much in this card: the lightning, the bridge falling, the hook, and it's easier to. I mean, I suppose I could take this card and read it literally, but your eyes, just like the Thoth deck, get drawn to a specific part of the card, which is really sweet.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because that was the first deck I read from. And I know it's not a great beginner deck, but I didn't know any better. And, you know, I'm a stubborn Aquarius, so you're not going to tell me what to do. So someone told me it was a good deck, so I got it. And I started reading with that, and I was really confused for a long time. And it took me a couple of years to figure it out. And I finally really, really loved that deck. But after that, it was hard to do. That's one reason why I think I have a hard time with, like, the Rider-Waite is because I started with such a esoteric and unusual approach to tarot already that getting into it from, you know, the one that everyone's expecting makes it, it just doesn't hit me the same way.
Well, I'm thinking with Lady Frida Harris was Crowley's illustrator in this, and she wasn't into it. And so I think that part of the draw to this is, I'm not sure how intuitive you are, but you certainly did put a lot of the symbolism from both it's like you have your foot in the past and in the present. Mm-hmm. That there's a lot of symbolism of both in the cards.
Yeah, I didn't want to throw all of it out. I mean, there was some things I was like, I want to do a totally new approach to them, but some of them it's like, it doesn't make sense if I throw everything out. It just card won't work without it. So yeah, I did have to keep some things in there. And I mean, that's a really good question. No one's asked me that, and it's totally true. I did have to make adjustments once in a while where I'm like, does this make sense? And a couple cards I redid several times, some because of the symbolism and some because appropriation issues. One was the guest card, or I'm sorry, the lover's card, which right now is the puka, the Irish shape-shifting creature. So that came from an idea of a friend of mine who was really into UFOs and cryptids and all this stuff too. And he's mentioned in the deck several times. His name is Chris, and he's one of the knockers cards. He's the guy holding up two sticks with a mustache. He came up with a lot of the ideas with me, and one of the ones he said was, what if instead of a lover's card, you had a spirit that was like two spirits in one body? And I'm like, oh, that's a really cool idea. So we started thinking of shapeshifters. So we thought of one that was the, let's just say it starts with skin and ends with a W word, and we're not going to say it. And I was posting all these cards to Instagram every night as I was finishing them and getting feedback. And for the most part, people were just, kind of like, oh, that's cool, that's cool. When that card went up, I got this message. It just said no. And I was like, that's an oddly short message or critique. So I DM'd the guy, and it turns out he was one of the chiefs of the Navajo Nation. And he said, please do not put that card in. You're calling that spirit on us and on yourself. And by making it and immortalizing it in a divination deck, you are unleashing it in the world through different methods than it's ever had access to. Please do not ever do that. And I'm like, okay, fine, I get it. I'm not going to do that. So I switched to the puka, which I figured is a little more harmless, but is also a shapeshifter.
Yeah, and you were talking in the introduction, how people always read the booklets and say, okay, this is what this illustration is and this is how you see it. But you also say in there that you don't have to do that. They can look at that and get their own whatever they want out of it rather than just relying on what you read. So you're giving them the free will to kind of play back and forth with them. And I think that's really important.
I think so too. And I think if you become a good reader at some point, you don't really even pay attention necessarily to the cards. You just start getting, messages from either their spirits or your own intuition or however you want to view it. But at some point, those symbols kind of like just take on a life of their own, and you don't have to look at the card literally anymore. And
you got to listen to the card, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Cece, because she's Cece in the chat room, and we call her anything, ceiling cat, whatever. Go ahead, because I was going to say something and I lost my train of thought. So jump in.
Well, like I said, I'm just impressed by not only the deck, but the depth you go into in the booklet. And I know that some people, this is going to be quite an interesting deck for paranormal investigators, for maybe Bigfoot hunters, etc. And you have that little bit in there about what could possibly be the source of a haunting or an activity within the home. And can you elaborate a little bit on how you came up with some of the ideas for that?
Most of those things happened as I did the card.
Oh.
And I recorded them and then decided that maybe this needs to be added. Now, I didn't record everything because at first I wasn't paying attention. And I just thought, well, I'm doing this kind of a deck. Maybe there's going to be some weird stuff going on. But after a while, I started realizing, hey, there's a pattern to this. So I started marking down what I thought about it and what I was noticing. And then a couple other people had told me, yeah, do you know what happened today? It was like on days when something didn't happen to me, it happened to a friend of mine.
So you literally were invoking.
Yeah. That's when I started realizing this is something a little more serious than I thought it was. Like at first, I was a little more tongue in cheek with the deck, but I was realizing it was getting a little heavier than I thought because it does kind of working with it gets a little. It'll be a little weird. I mean, I noticed a couple of times when I read with it and the lights flicker, or I get so many knocks in the house.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Speaking of that, everybody's talking about having knocks lately. Have you guys noticed? And somebody said 3, and some people are saying 4. Is there a number? Talk about this for a second, because I've had it too. I mean, I've had things and come in and nobody's there. So is there a number particularly? And either you guys thought about that?
I haven't had a specific number unless it's something that I've agreed with. Like sometimes when you talk to whatever your house spirit is, you can be like, hey, you want to answer yes 1 and no 2, right, or whatever you work out with them. But yeah, some people, if it's 3 or 4 or whatever, that's just how they want to identify themselves. And
yeah,
sometimes that's what you hear.
Yes, and it's
they want attention too.
Yeah, especially at 3:00 in the morning. It's like, okay, thanks.
Right.
I think this is a good time to take a quick break, so stay put, and we'll be back in about 2 minutes.
Don't go away. There's more Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks right after these important messages.
Hey everyone, it's Marla. If you like tonight's episode of Stirring the Cauldron and the archive podcast as well, take a look at the show's YouTube channel and check out the dozens of shows that are there just waiting to be heard. New shows are added each week, and while you're there, why not subscribe? It's free. And if you click on that tiny little bell icon at the top of the page, you'll be notified when new shows are available. Just go to youtube.com and then type in Stirring the Cauldron Para X, and the link will appear. Just like magic.
Demons, vampires, werewolves, skinwalkers, all of this and more, Sunday nights at midnight on the Staring Into the Abyss radio show. Come, get lost with us.
Come explore an innovative oracle deck that looks into the world of the wise women, the healers, the seers, the witch. This powerful and insightful deck was created by Marla Brooks, host of Stirring the Cauldron on the Para X radio network, and beautifully illustrated by Anya Khan. It includes an easy-to-read booklet and guide with straightforward, gentle guidance on using the deck and interpreting the messages of the cards. And unlike other oracle decks, each card comes with its own personalized magical incantation that provides energy, reinforces the card's meaning, and helps the desired message to be sent out into the universe. The Witch's Oracle is the ideal divination deck for witches and non-pagans alike, and it works well for both seasoned readers and beginners. To find out more about the Witch's Oracle deck, go to www.marlabrooks.com and click on the Oracle Deck link.
Hi, Barry McGuire here, inviting you to come along with Marla Brooks, and let's start stirring the cauldron together on Para X.
Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks, Thursdays at 9 o'clock on Para X.
Welcome back to Stirring the Cauldron. Once again, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
And my guest is Davezilla. He's the creator of the Tarot of the Unexplained deck. And also joining us tonight is my special co-host, Barbara Duncan. One thing in the book, I'm jumping around because I'm trying to get as much in as we can. You know, a lot of books that do tarot or oracle decks, you know, they talk about spreads. Now, you're not talking about spreads in this. So in my way of thinking, it's like, first of all, this isn't a beginner's deck, but, you know, people can learn, the basics. But so you're kind of letting everybody just do it their own way, and it work better for them because it's from them, right? Is that why you're not?
I have a few on my website that people can try, but for the most part, I've noticed that you can use any spread you want. You know, Celtic Cross works. 3-card spread, you know, standard boring 3-card spread works just fine with those. I made a couple that were, one was shaped like a flying saucer. I did one that was shaped like the traditional witchcraft stang. I did one that's, which is like a Y shape tool. I did one that's, where is it? Oh, it was based on the bridge from the bridges I used for the tower card from Point Pleasant.
It's kind of fun to do that because I did that on my oracle decks. I did a couple of one. I did a witch's hat and another one, the broom. And
nice.
It's creative. Yeah. Okay. Go with Barbara.
Well, the 3-card deck actually works very well with this. A 3-card spread actually works very well with this deck. I've done 2 3-card spreads so far, and actually very accurate when I look at the book going, and the only other deck I've been able to read myself with is the Thoth deck. All the other ones don't seem to work, but this one seems to have, I don't know whether I just have an affinity for it because, you know, I keep drawing the portals for some strange reason.
Interesting. Did you notice the trick with the Page and the Hunter yet of portals? If you put those 2 cards side by side, they're reaching through at each other and pulling each other into each other's cards.
Fascinating.
Wow.
Oh, yes.
There's a couple of cards where I did that. Like the entire Knocker's suit is one continuous forest, and that one Bigfoot, she's moving her way through a story all the way down to the end. But it's when I did the original board, it's one continuous 6-foot painting that I had to break up into smaller ones to make one to make that work. And there's a lot of cards that if you actually lay them all out, you'll find that a lot of them connect in different ways. And it was an idea I took from another deck. I used to love for a long time after I had the Witch's Tarot by, not the one that's sold now. There's out of I think it's Ellen Cannon Reed, and it's out of print now, but it had beautiful illustrations, and there was a lot of things in there where different parts of the cards would connect to each other, and it would make you think of the card in a different way or see a spread and a different connection. So I was like, oh, that's a really good idea. I want to do that. So I have a lot of trees that overlap other cards. And if you happen to get lucky enough to see them next to each other, you go, oh, wait a minute.
Well, it makes total sense because when you're looking at a tarot deck and the court cards or the suit cards, they do tell a complete story. And they should tell a complete story.
You're right. Yeah, they're supposed to. Yeah, and a lot of them don't. And I don't like the decks. I really get mad when I see a deck where they kind of like cheap out and all they do is just show you the number, like the number of coins, or the number of wands, but they don't actually like paint the figures.
Sorry.
I don't like those kind of decks. Those kind of bother me.
I was interested, as everybody knows, tarot regularly, we know that the first card is the Fool, but the Ghost Stalker is on this deck. Now explain that.
Okay, so originally that on the deck, before Weiser picked this deck up, I originally had printed it on my own dime, and the first card was a friend of mine who's a kind of a famous ghost hunter. He had a show called Ghost Stalkers, and his name is John Tenney, and he happens to be, we live near each other. I've known him since he was a teenager. We've been on ghost hunting things together. But Tenney and I are old friends, and I said, hey, do you want to be the first card? And he was like, yeah, sure. That'd be great. So I actually I painted him out in this alley near where we live, near our favorite dive bar. And I have him kind of like walking off into the gloom. And he always kind of dresses like Rod Serling from the Twilight Zone. And so it looked kind of cool seeing him coming out of the gloom. But when I got to Weiser, they were like, hey, we need model releases from everybody. And he was stuck in England on something. And he didn't get the message in time. And we waited. And when he finally got it and sent it to me, the publisher was like, no, they had already called me and said, we're getting behind. Can you make a backup card just in case? I'm like, shoot. And there was like 6 cards I had to do that on because I couldn't get Avi Loeb and Jeff Meldrum's back in time either. And they were 2 cards that are in the... So if you have the original deck for me that I printed on my own, there's only 150 in existence. There are 6 cards completely different than this deck. Everything else is the same. But he was the first card. So he was the first Ghost Stalker, but I figured if I'm going to do it over, I'll just start over as if he wasn't even the inspiration. And so I thought of doing this woman walking off into like a haunted forest kind of thing. And I really like how it came out. I thought it made a nice, like a vibrant opening card too, with the sun coming down and the kind of creepy swamp.
It's perfect. It sounded really good. I had to think about it first, and I said, okay, Ghost Stalker. Okay, well, there's a ghost suit in there, but it does follow all the way from beginning to end. And what do you tell people who the first thing to tell them about this deck that makes it not so? I'm not saying that they're not going to get it or anything, but how would you just explain it? So here's the deck, and I know you know tarot. Don't think too hard on it, or what's the advice?
Well, I'll tell you what I told Weiser when I pitched it to them. I said, this is the deck that Fox Mulder from the X-Files would have used. And they were like, oh, fantastic. Tell us more. And then I said, look, weird times call for weird tools, and that's what I made here. And they're like, oh, that's a great tagline. So that's pretty much what I'd tell people is that, we're living in some pretty weird times. So why do we, let's not keep making the same kind of decks all the time. We might need some different ones,
Yeah, and this is, like I said in the beginning, so unique and so interesting. And, I mean, she's able to sit down and do it, and I hadn't got a chance this week to do too much of it. I pulled a card, because you start out and you want to learn to pick a card, one card for the day, just
Sure,
go that way. And that way, you can also get more relaxed with them, instead of thinking, oh, I have to do it this way, I have to do it that way. It's nobody's way. I mean, whatever you're doing it your own way, right?
Yeah. One thing I love that Weiser did was putting in tiny full-color versions of the cards in the book on each page, because it does make it so much easier. Sometimes you get those like black and white booklets that you unfold, and they're just really hard to manage. And this, being able to actually look for the card by visual is nice.
Mm-hmm. But Barbara and I were joking. We need magnifying glasses for the books, but
me too.
Yeah, but well worth it. Well worth the squint. Yes. Yeah.
Although I will tell people that if you go to your website, you do have larger print versions of the
printed out. Yeah. Yeah. When you said that,
yeah, I like big print.
I didn't know that until today. So I've got eye strain for the last 3 days. So thank you, Barbara, for telling me now.
Well, if you guys want, I can send you the original PDFs that I used for proofing, because those are like 14 point or something.
My eyes would thank you for that. Yeah.
Oh, mine do too. I'm 60, so I have a hard time with the little. I don't like this 6 point or what is this?
Oh, I'm not sure.
It's like 8-point type. It's pretty tiny.
Yeah, well, I mean, it happened to fit, but the cards themselves are beautiful, and
thank you.
And I like the silver all around them. It makes it a little bit good, better, nice.
Yeah, they're good. They're pretty substantial weight cards. They're not those aren't flimsy by any means. They're definitely a good card stock.
Yeah, I picked up the deck and I thought, gee, I didn't realize it was only 78 cards because it just seemed bigger. And then I picked a card and I said, boy, that's really good card stock. I wonder how they're going to do if you try to, get ready with them. And, we do 52 pick up first and, instead of shuffling them. But they really do easy shuffle. They shuffle pretty well. Yeah, because that's really important. I think some people have huge decks and you can't get your hands wrapped around them. And some are just like cement, and so it has to fit a hand, and it needs good shuffle. So yeah, it works. It does.
I agree with you. I have a deck. I think it's by Otto Schmidt, and it's probably not very well known. He's a German comic artist, but and I've always liked his work. And when I found out he did a tarot deck, I'm like, oh, I have to have it. And he did his figures are very El Greco-like. They're very long and lean. And because of that, these cards got to be close to 7 inches long. They are really hard to shuffle. Really hard to shuffle.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Some people don't think about things, I mean, they do it their way.
Yeah, they do. Form over function.
I'm trying to keep us getting more and more stuff to do, but we don't have a whole lot of time. So I want you to tell everybody where they should go for the website and what they can find there, for example, aside from you.
Yeah, so my website is hexsupport.club, not .com, .club, and you can get the deck anywhere that tarot decks are sold. Weiser sells all over the world, so it's on Amazon, it's on Barnes & Noble, Powell Books, Chapters in Canada. Everybody's got it. And I've gotten some emails from people in different countries that said that they already got theirs and they really love it. So I know it's everywhere. I mostly post a lot of. I'm posting some things right now that are excerpts from another book I'm writing, which is called How to Witch, and it's kind of a parody of witchcraft books. It's going to be real knowledge, but also very, very silly.
Oh, wow.
So, it'll tell you real things, but in a snarky way. Like, for example, basil smells very spicy, like star anise and failed marriages, kind of stuff. It's not, It's not a it's for it's very Gen X kind of humor, but it's not I don't know. That's just how I am. That's how I write. So some people will like it. Some people will be like, I don't like this. But I'm like that. I don't mind controversy.
No, it's great. So maybe we should talk about that on another show, and maybe for this might work. Could you come on to do a reading show from the deck?
Mm-hmm.
Because that probably is more like show and tell. So maybe we can do that in the near future too, because people are saying,
absolutely.
well, we're listening to this and it's kind of short, and but we want to see it in practice and whatever. So let's think about that. I'll get in touch with you about that, because that would be great.
Absolutely.
And so, is there anything else on their website that people should know about, enticing them to get over there?
Yeah, I'm mostly just using it to promote what I'm doing. So there's all the this obviously this appearance is on there. There's a calendar of all the speaking events, and then they disappear after they've happened. But I got to go back and archive them all so people can link to all the old ones. But yeah, it's really just I'm going to keep writing and keep creating things. And I've already been asked to do an extension set to this deck of more cryptids and more ghosts. So I got to talk wiser into that. But I've had so many people asking, can you make expansion packs? I'm like, this isn't Cards Against Humanity. And they're like, well, they're like, yeah, but it would be cool if you got, I missed this, you didn't do this cryptid, you didn't do this ghost. I'm like, well, there's only 78, but that may be in the works.
That sounds good. Good.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to have to get out of here pretty quick.
Right.
But I want to thank you, and sorry, got mixed up today, and lots of stuff to do.
It's my phone's fault. Do not blame the host. It's my phone.
Well, okay, take it.
I will take all the credit. No, my phone was being weird.
I mean, okay, it's a weird deck. So this turned out to be a weird show, but
and it's Mercury retrograde, so
yeah, that too, yeah. And astrological, Barbara, you said it's times are going to be until when?
It's the rocky road this weekend through the full moon, so just sit back and laugh.
Full moon in Aquarius, yeah, it's going to be a weird one.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. All right.
And all sorts of other,
All right. I'll be in touch with you guys. But I want to thank you for doing it and making this deck.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This deck is really wonderful, and so I was so happy to get it. And Barbara, thank you for having me drag you in, because you were so happy about the deck. I thought, yay! Well,
I loved it. Yeah.
All right.
A really quick story. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
A quick story about. You think that this deck has some interesting things happening to it. When I picked up the card number 4, which is Indrid Cold, which I think is the Emperor, I misread that as I understand. And I thought, what a perfect thing that the Emperor would say. I misread Indrid Cold for I understand.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It also sounds like something Indrid Cold would say on the phone to someone to freak them out. Yeah, that is good.
All right, you guys. I've got to get off before Sarge kills me.
Okay.
So,
thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for doing it. I'll be in touch with you. Barbara, I'm always in touch with you because you're hanging around. Yes. Yeah. And thank you, everybody, for listening in. And until next time, everyone, blessed be and merry meet again. Good night.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks. Please join us again next week at the same time for another great guest and more cauldron stirring. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2024. The Mysterioso March by Kevin MacLeod is licensed through Incompetech.com.